Hello colleagues, this is Patrick Holt coming to you from Singapore. This is a review of Samara and Davis's article, Interrupting Heteronormativity Towards a Queer Curriculum Theory. The key takeaways from this presentation are to understand the confines of what I call the hetero box, and how we can begin to bring the dismantling of this box to our practice of developing and delivering curriculum. I don't think we'll find any surprises in this box. We have a man, we have a woman, man and woman meet, and the results are the typically accepted societal norms of the male and female identity and their relationship parameters. In Samara and Davis's article, they refer to queer theory. So what is queer? What is queer theory? Often, we relate queer with lifestyle choices like this one. Despite common uses of the word queer to refer to out-of-the-box lifestyles, this is not queer theory. Samara and Davis are not attempting to define queer as a bodily act or lifestyle. Queer is not meant to be a word to classify groups who identify outside the heterosexual box. Rather, queer functions as a marker to represent interpretive work that refuses the heterosexual bribe. So what is the heterosexual bribe? Well, it's the idea that those of us that are willing to climb into the hetero box and play along with its narrowly defined expectations, regardless of our intersexual and relational complexities, benefit and prosper in society. Though Samara and Davis are looking deeply into the complexities of human identity, knowledge, and sexuality, they do not want to create identities around sexual preferences. Rather, they seek to disrupt and interrupt what we think we know about the heterosexual norm, and as educators, we can lead that disruption through our interactions with set curricula. According to Samara and Davis, queer theory does not ask that pedagogy become sexualized, but that it excavate and interpret the way it already is sexualized, and furthermore, that it begin to interpret the way that it is explicitly heterosexualized. This leads us to our first key understanding. And that is that we as educators recognize the heterosexual bribe, and that we work to change and re-narrate that story. Society, as part of the construction of the hetero box, has led us to believe that identity is structured around the attraction to the opposite sex. However, as Samara and Davis point out, Sedgwick's work has shown that there are identities that are not structured around opposite sex desire or bodily acts that are successfully contributing to the ongoing production of knowledge. Samara and Davis refer to Foucault as he explains in his History of Sexuality that heterosexual identities continually experience dissonance between lived experiences of pleasure and desire and culturally sanctioned expressions of heterosexuality. So in other words, the idea of heterosexuality is not so limited to what we think it is, and there are variations and other possibilities. So if this is the case, this being the case, heterosexual identities must exist in a particular closet, a well-defined and restrictive heterosexual closet. So Davis and Samara wonder about why there is all this inquiry into queer identities without equal inquiry into heterosexual ones. Of course, we can easily conclude that what is accepted and normal needs no investigation. But this in fact leads us to our next key understanding. As previously said, we could conclude that what is accepted and normal needs no investigation. But in fact, heterosexuality, because of its own closely confining behaviors and norms, and because it is so limited and unknown, we need to unpack it. So let's look at Davis and Samara's inquiry. In order to inquire into how identity interprets texts, they brought a group of literary readers together who identified as gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgendered to interpret assigned readings. They predicted that the responses would be similar due to shared identity. They were wrong. The responses to the literary fiction showed it was obvious that humans experience events of identification and of pleasure that are not necessarily understood as proper heterosexual conduct, and that the various social norms around gender and sexuality force open secrets about what constitutes both identification and pleasure. In other words, we have limited heterosexual identity to one narrow definition, whereas queer, because of a more deeper inquiry into its deviance from the normal, has many more opportunities of a variety of identifications. This leads us to another key understanding. We, being Sumara and Davis, are interested in showing how all educators ought to become interested in the complex relationships among the various ways in which sexualities are organized and identified, and in the many ways in which knowledge is produced and represented. According to Sumara and Davis, as educators we can do the following to interrupt and disrupt the hetero narrative. As educators, we can dig deeper into what sexuality is and how it interacts with knowledge. As educators, to understand the lack of investigation into and the lack of stability in the area of being heterosexual. We can interact with and build curriculum that looks at the diversity of differences in people, not the differences in categories of people. We need to stop worrying about knowing the knowledge and understand how the knowledge is shaped and structured to build certain narratives. Some final thoughts. How might educators think about structuring the curriculum that accomplishes some of this needed work? Educators can create hetero-topic curriculum events. These are opportunities for curriculum to look at familiar structures and offer up a chance to interpret them for their limitations. In this way, curriculum can begin to disrupt. These interruptions to heteronormative thinking assist in the important work of eliminating homophobia and heterosexism in society, but they also create some conditions for the human capacity for knowing and learning to become expanded.